Oyagala okumanya ebiriwo, ebyaliwo, oba ebigenda okubaawo. Program Tambula n'okumanya egguse. Tambula n'okumanya ku MRU TV ne Royal FM.
In the art of Ugandan football landscape, a storied club has been etched in the nation's history. Express Football Club, from its humble beginnings in 1957 to its current struggles. The team's journey is a microcosm of the challenges facing Ugandan football, which mentally shows into the historical background, decline and current state. Express Football Club aiming to identify the obstacles, success in the Ugandan Premier League clubs to explore conversations, solutions for a brighter future. My name is KIVUMBI Najibuh. Today I am with a professional journalist. We are going to describe for you everything about Express Football Club.
I am called Tendo Victor Musoke. That is the brand name, but originally it is Tendo Nicholas Musoke. I am a journalist who works for radio and TV and also writes, and I've done that for the last 30 plus years. Express, the team, had existed as early as 1952. It was founded by the late Joe Chiwanuka. And it was a recreation club that he used to gather people from all walks of life, especially those that were working with him in a newspaper called the Uganda Express. So it comes as a brand for the Express newspaper. Then Joe Chiwanuka, a football enthusiast, he was a coach and manager. He happened to be part of the team that toured Uganda in 1956, famously called the Barefoot Cranes. They went there and did not have boots. They could not play with boots. They were given boots, but they couldn't use them, so they fastened bandages and played. That would be a story for another day. Joe Chiwanuka being one of the people that escorted that team, did have a chance to survey around football with the colleagues that he was with, including Polycarp Kakoza and so many others. So on coming back after they played those games that the Uganda Cranes played, of course it wasn't named Cranes by then, but we call it Cranes now. When he came back, he bought an assortment of equipment, including soccer boots. So when he comes back, amongst the players that made that team had one of the founder players in Express called Jimmy Sewava. He was part of that team. So a year later, in July 1957, he gathers with his colleagues to form a club, because then he had gotten the knowledge to differentiate between teams and clubs. If you go back those years, teams were existing: Mengo, Budo, Zambia, Sarumbe for Nubians, Bitumastic for those who were working on the road construction and all that. So Express happened to be among them. So he got the technology, we should call it technology, because that is the art of forming a football club. You must have structures, you must have resolutions and all that. So that meeting sat at the Express newspaper headquarters. It was in Katwe, where the former White Nile bar used to, because he owned that White Nile bar and they had offices there. So he sat there with a couple of colleagues, including Dr. Barnabas Kunuka, Dr. Paul Senyendo, Gasta Nsubuga, and Mr. Chiwanuka. So they sat and made resolutions to make a football club and had everything registered, and he, Joe Chiwanuka, became the coach. Dr. Barnabas Kunuka became the first chairperson in that resolution. That is when the club started in 1957. So I think that history makes it very clear, and those were the founder members in that. So it was regular or irregular league games. So the knowledge they got was you must have a league to be able to pick players who are consistent and all that. So they advocated to build the league. So that survey started, but already Express was playing. So when the league came, that was another 10 years. In 1968, Express was one of the teams that formed the first league. It had 8 teams. Then comes Express, which was a people's team. That is where they called it Mukwano Gwabanji, because it had no foundation apart from people who had created it. Then the achievements, it was the first team to put on soccer boots. Because of those boots I told you about, he had to use them on his team. Even before the Cranes team knew how to put them on, his team started using them. So that is one achievement. Then, when they started, they were the first team also to sell a player outside Uganda. One of their young strikers, Ali Chitonsa, was sold to a team called Zamalek in Egypt in 1964. Ali Chitonsa was sold to Zamalek. I think that is information very few people could know about. It was the first team also to own a playing pitch. We would call it stadium. Of course, now the stadium thing has changed a lot, but they started Wankurukuku Stadium in 1957. It's the same year they made the inception. So they had their own home. OFC did not have a pitch. A team like Prisons were playing with Najibuh. Simba, which is the army team, was also playing in Najibuh. Kofi was also playing in Najibuh. Ginger they had, but they were not a club. They were a town, so they owned everything there. Same with the Ambare and all that. So they are the first team or club to have their own home in Wankurukuku. And then they adopted training grounds whereby you don't play from where you train from. They use different training grounds like Kanyanya, Bukesa, where Mengo Secondary School is right. But Express had its own fan base. That is what became the Red Army, because their tag is the Red Eagles. So that army became so volatile, so passionate, and so famous that it even landed them into trouble. Around 1977, in the midst of the battle to win the league, Simba wanted to dethrone Express. Express won the league in 1974 and 1975. Then in 1976, KCCA came and won it. So Simba felt so agitated because they had won the league previously in 1970 and 71, and they had lost their mojo to these clubs that had many fans. So in the tussle, there was a game between Express and Simba to determine if Simba can win the league in 1977, and Express beat them 2-0. In the process, a scuffle ensued, and army men and fans started fighting around Chisenyi, Namirembe, and everywhere. It is on that day that the infamous Kano Nassur governor said he has banned everything to do with Express. No putting on red colors, no calling yourself an Express player, fan, or administrator. The staunch ones went into exile, and the players were actually given a rule. Only 3 players could go to one club. So they wanted to dismantle the spirit. That is how Express got banned. And they only returned after the fall of the Amin government. Amin government fell in 1979, and then Express's return was made in 1980, because 79 the league was already playing. They could not come in. So they came back into the league. Now, that also takes them to another milestone. They are the only club that has never been relegated in top flight football, because they were there when it was put there in 68, and they never got relegated. That ban was political. So when the ban, the government changed, they came back into the league. So they have never played lower league football. From that time until today, Express has never been relegated. That is why many people had that time around 2018, when it was about to be relegated, it made so much news that it was a sacrilegious thing. That is why it made so much trending, and so many people were trolling it. So full era is between 1991 and 1997. In 1991, they won the Uganda Cup. In 1992, they won the Uganda Cup again. In 1993, they won the league for the first time since 1975. And in 1994, they won the Uganda Cup. In 1995, they won the league and the cup. That is a double, to go and become the Sarongo, like Sports Club Villa had done it between 86 and 89. Then in 1996, they retained the league. In 1997, they won the Uganda Cup. So in that stretch between 1991 and 97, they either won the league or the Uganda Cup. Every year they were celebrating, which is the most successful is between 91, obviously, and 1997. And in that era, they again reached the semi-finals of the Champions League now. That game that many people will talk about when they were beaten by Orlando Pirates. That will be story for another day. And that era was having Vincent Barembera as the chairman. That means he is the most successful club chairman then. And the coaches then had David Oti between 91 and 94, and then Jimmy Mugua in 95, and then in 96 they brought a Serbian called Dragan Popovic until 1997. So those are the coaches that ushered them. But there is one man that is synonymous with all that success, Godfrey Nyola. He was a player in the 91 up to 94. Then he was an assistant coach to Jimmy Mugua and also an assistant coach to Dragan Popovic. So he is the player that has all the personality that has most accolades and stories there. Of course, he went on to win his own trophies in 2001 and 2003 as a coach. But that era, I think, is well defined. Goalkeeper in Express history is called Joseph Masajage. He's the one who was a goalkeeper for the Cranes in 1968 when Uganda went for AFCON, and in 1974. So he was an Express goalkeeper between the 60s when the league started until 1975. He won all those trophies I talked about, and he was a Cranes goalkeeper. Then the right back is arguably George Semogerere. George Semogerere came to Express in 1985, 88 actually, because he became licensed in 88, but he had been around and played loan in certain teams, Afro Motors, Goba Motors, but he became a licensed player in 88. So he was part of those victories I talked about from 91 until 2001, and is the longest serving Express captain. Other player who is also a legend is Ali Chitonsa. I told you about him being the first player to be bought money. He is also the first top scorer for Express in the league when it had started, but he had left winger should be Fred Mukasa. He was called Gasso. If you know Gasso Basses, he's a player who never failed to pass through the wing when he was delivering, and is the reason Sekatawa scored many goals, because he used to cross balls for him, and he also played for the national team. And Hassan Mubiru, of course, many people know about him. He was top scorer for Express in the league in 2001, 2002 and 2003. The same feat Sekatawa made, only that Sekatawa did not do all the three for Express. So I think there, in that aspect, Mubiru gets his kudos. Then of course there is another player who made a name for Express, David Obua. In a time where Express players failed to get transfers, he's one who moved from Express and went to Kaizer Chiefs in South Africa, and later went to Scotland, and he had led them to victories in 2001 and 2003. So I think he is also a legend there. The other people will give you other names, but I would like to zero on those ones in the aspect of legends. For Express's biggest rivalry is Sports Club Villa, because during that time when Express was banned, many people who feared to be arrested masqueraded and started Najibuh Boys. Now that is the club. It existed already, but they registered it to play in the league and took some players, of course 3, like the rules were saying, but the administrators who were not known, like Patrick Kawoya, went into that club. So by the time Express came back in 1980, Villa had already gotten promoted to the league, that is in 1979. as Najibuh boys. Now, because of the rule that does not allow clubs of the same parenthood being in the same league, Express wanted Villa to get demoted so that they reclaim their position. Now, Villa said, no, we are an independent club. We have no association with Express FC. So they changed from Najibuh boys to Najibuh Villa, which was obvious because Patrick Kawaya supported Aston Villa, and Aston Villa were European champions then. So they became Najibuh Villa. And later also removed the Najibuh thing because Express wanted its Najibuh boys junior team. So it became Sports Club Villa. That is how it started. So they had that beef. It was civil. In the stands, fans were shouting, but it got escalated in 1991 when Sports Club Villa signed Express's captain Paul Nkata. So that beef became so big, and it got escalated in 2003 and 4, where between Godfrey Chirumira and the hierarchy then at Villa, there was that Arrow Boys story, where if Express beat 8 goals a team, you would expect Villa to come and beat them 9. Express and Villa, just know, either the match will end in a riot or chaos. Like for instance, in 1988, there was a Uganda Cup game that had soldiers come and invade Najibuh when Sports Club Villa was winning. The soldiers led by the late Fred Rwigema, who eventually died in the Rwanda war, and started training Express people again. So that is how hostile it is. You will never find a stiff one in Uganda than that one.
However, Express FC's new players are facing challenges adapting to the team's style of play and integrating with the squad.
Performing able to sample mupira, awareness yabasambi ku kisayo, reaction and speed, olaba nti bibadde byanjawulo compared to all other football clubs at the moment in Uganda. Era singa bafuna abatendesi actually era basobola okusigala nga bagenda ne philosophy tubale tuzimbye nzula Express egenda kujamala mu kifo ekirungi era n'ekiyinza obbasumbamu ebyesente singa zigala nga ziri constant because bw'obeera nga osasula bulungi abasambi omupiira ufuna ebizibu bitono era abasambi basigala bali focused.
Contributing to the team's inconsistent start, and Express FC, they are in a 10th position in the Ugandan Premier League. The club needs to address issues like lack of team chemistry, inconsistency performance, and adapting to the Ugandan Premier League. The head coach for Express FC currently, Coach Jimmy Chintu, has solutions including building the team's structure and work ethic, focusing on youth development and tactical ability to inject new ideas. The team's struggles have impacted their brand, but Chintu's philosophy and player development have potential for player growth.
Waawo waliwo ebintu ebirina okutereezebwa naye twalisabye nti bitereezebwe ng'abawagizi bali mu kisaawe kubanga omupiira tegukola nnyo makulu singa waba tewaliyo abawagizi naddala ettiimu ey'abawagizi kubanga eno ettiimu emanyiddwa nga ttiimu y'abawagizi kyekigifudde nnyo ekyenjawulo ng'ovuddeko okuba nti ttiimu y'amaanyi ttiimu ya byafaayo naye ttiimu y'abawagizi be bakola omupiira tekitukola nnyo bulungi kulaba nga buli bw'otunula emabega mulabe ku bantu omuwagizi omusambi wokubira ababiri mujje mutuwa amaanyi oyo mutabeerawo tusobola samba bulungi era tubasaba mujje mulungi munyumire omupiira nga mulungi nnyo.
Moving forward, Express FC needs to win more games, to engage fan base and show their unique style to strengthen their identity.